Hey fam,
Hey, everybody. How's it going?
uh, what's up? What's up?
What's happening?
What's up,
All
Kim? What's up,
right.
CO?
Oh, just doing the thing, keeping it pushing, keeping it pushing.
Absolutely, absolutely. What's up to the YouTube world? What's up to the whole ETM media family? We back as usual every Tuesday. Good to see
Every
everybody.
Tuesday at 9. Tuesday
Like and
at
subscribe.
9.
Right. Like and subscribe. Get it in there. Hit that bell.
Hit the bell. Notification gang. Right.
Well, yeah, notifications. Stay in the know. Stay in the know. So we missing one tonight, but maybe Brother Moya will be joining us a little bit later. In the
Yes.
meantime, just go through a little bit of quick housekeeping. ETM Media Group provides show intros, shows outros, voiceovers, script copy, 15 and 30-second promos, 2 business day turnaround. Send an email to etmmediagroup@gmail.com. All right. So, when we last left our heroes, we were talking about HR 40 markup session. We'll get back into that tonight. First, we'll take a quick look at what's been in the news this week. All right, Senegal has a law criminalizing slavery. Here is why that matters. Dakar, it has been 11 years since Senegal's National Assembly passed a law declaring the Atlantic slave trade and the enslavement of African people a crime against humanity. The law passed by Senegalese Senate on April 27th not only recognizes slavery as a crime, but it also requires that the history of slavery be taught in schools. One of the articles of the law designates the 27th of April as a day for Senegal to commemorate the criminalization of slavery. To this date, Senegal is the only African country that has voted for such a law criminalizing this appalling act in human history and dared to call it a crime against humanity. The city of Dakar has been organizing events for the past 3 years on April 27th, and there is support for local organizations as well as those from the diaspora to push for the abolition of slavery by France's Second Republic, and at the time be applicable to its colonies around the world. It is estimated that 22 million people were from the African world between 1500 and 1888. All right, so acknowledgement is the first step towards redress. So that's a good sign there.
Yes, it is, Kim. And yeah, and real quick, this is actually this is really interesting to see this as we embark on our own reparations journey here, right?
Yeah, definitely. It shows that people are ready to talk about it, and like I said, acknowledgement is the first step towards redress. So yeah, just gotta take that first step.
Yeah, and lastly, reminds me of the acknowledgement, redress, closure model, right? Of what the objectives of a reparations plan or program or policy would ultimately be under the thinking of folks like Dr. William Darity Jr., right, of Duke University, right, and others, right, Kirsten Mullen also, right, and others as well that identify acknowledgement, redress, and closure, and the acknowledgement comes with the guarantee of restitution, right? That's important to make clear there too, and I think this does that somewhat.
Definitely a good sign, a step in the right direction. Um, yeah, so moving forward, let's see what other restitution news is in the news. A restaurant manager who forced a black man to work without pay owes him more than $500,000 in restitution, court rules. John Christopher Smith was forced to work at a cafeteria in Conway without pay for years. His manager, Bobby Edwards, a white man, pleaded guilty to forced labor in 2018 and was sentenced to 10 years in prison for the abuse of Smith, a black man who has intellectual disabilities. A U.S. District Court judge in 2019 ordered Edwards, who is white, to pay Smith around $273,000 in restitution, which represented Smith's unpaid wages and overtime. But the court erred in failing to include liquidated damages in the restitution, a provision of the Fair Labor Standards Act, which would have doubled the amount of restitution Smith received, according to the April ruling from the Fourth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals based in Richmond, Virginia. So
Wow.
another good sign that they're holding people accountable for their past harm.
Yeah, and that sounds like a tragic story, right? What a like. I mean, let's just keep it real. What a jerk, right? I mean, you got somebody who's mentally, sort of, incapacitated, and you're taking advantage of them for years and not paying them. Right? That sounds like New York's labor markets to me. I'm originally from New York. You all know that. So I spent part of my paying through college years in New York, working in New York City restaurants, like the victim here, and I can tell you, it's bare knuckles. It's hardcore, and something like this is probably more common than we probably know and probably want to know, right? So and while I do think one thing this does show is that, like, since they said that they made it sounds like an error or something in the calculation, right, or they made an omission, right? When it comes to restitution and getting what's yours, right, it's important to make sure that you get it all, right, and know what all there is to get, right. So that's one probably thing that we can take away from this.
Yeah, they call that liquidated damages, which would be punitive damages. Yeah, and at the 273,000 mark, divide that by 10 years. That's a 27,000 a year salary. So he definitely deserves everything that he's being awarded.
And one more thing, Kim, if I could, and I think everything he's being awarded for sure. Like, I agree with you 100%. I was going to add to what you were saying and say that just think about this in terms of the reparations advocacy, right? And that work, right? You got one person who was not paid for think about this in the context of what we're fighting for, right? You have here a modern day example of somebody not being paid wages, and the court and the government knows exactly how to calculate how much that person is owed, right, et cetera. And then, it has the compensatory damages, right? And then it has the liquidated, punitive damages, right? We are very good at this, right? It's only when we talk about the debt that's owed to us, right, that we get really not sure how to do the math, and we don't know what reparations is, or we don't know how to calculate it, right? Or right. So
we don't know who's black no more.
Right.
All
Yeah.
of that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. We don't know who the victim is. Right. There's all this trouble. Right. That's one thing that this shows. And then actually one other thing that this shows, and I just sort of thinking about it, is this is a redress effort through the court system, right? And that the courts are very used to this kind of thing, right? When we've tried this as a people to go to the courts for our redress, right? Obviously we've had problems, right? We haven't had any wide scale success, even over generations, really.
Right. So, like I said, things are looking on the upswing. We'll have to put this one in our tickler file to refer to, when we're going through our own reparations battle. All right. Next, we have fire chief gets backlash after advising police to stop responding to these black neighborhoods. Lancaster Fire Chief Francis Butch Gett is under fire over remarks he posted encouraging police to stop responding to some black neighborhoods. Dear police, stop responding to these Black neighborhoods. They will eventually kill each other, and the fake news won't have a story. Volunteer Ancaster Fire Chief Francis Brute Gett posted. County officials say because Gett's position is a volunteer one, he can't be removed by the county. Instead, it's up to the fire department to decide his future.
Get him out of here.
Yeah,
Get
he's
him
got to
up
go.
all the way up out of here. It sounds real Trumpish, don't it, man? That's kind of Trumpy, right? You know, the weird thing about you know, yeah, I'm actually gonna withhold comment on it because like I feel like kind of like the originally when a lot of folks were talking about quote unquote community policing, right? And like there's even all this talk, now and there has been for a while, for years really, but about abolishing the police, right? In some ways of thinking, yeah, we don't want you to come to our neighborhood anyway.
Exactly, that's what I'm thinking.
But that doesn't work without like our own way to self-govern, right, and self-determine and maintain our own safety, even from people like him, right? So yeah, let's work towards that. Yeah, let's work towards that. Mr. Trump, person, right? Let's maybe we have common ground. Okay, we just found common ground. We
Definitely. I was reading a story about some Karen on a college campus, and she was calling out to her base and saying, "Oh, we need to annoy the police. We just put in all these fake 911 calls and disrupt their day and have them come out." And I'm like, "No way am I calling the police to anywhere near me. Mm-hmm. What are you talking about?" So that's white privilege in itself, the fact that they feel like they could just play with the police like that and nothing's going to happen to them. So next, what's going on? India reports more than 357,000 new COVID cases as total crosses 20 million. There were 229 new cases reported over a span of 24 hours, bringing the total to 20.28 million, according to Health Ministry data. India's first cases were detected in late January last year, and the country's total did not cross 10 million infections until December, according to Johns Hopkins University data. But the next 10 million cases were reported in the span of just under 5 months, mostly in April. So it sounds like they're having an uptick in COVID over in India.
Yeah, it's really
bad.
Really bad what's going on over there, and it's not talked about a lot, in Western media. I mean, it is talked about, like you hear about it, especially like on financial news, right? But not talked about enough. Probably we're still dealing with the issues here, right? With respect to COVID. There's been, the latest story for us here is that there's been that the number of people who are taking the vaccine is going down in, I think, over 45 states. So there's some concern going on there. President Biden was out today. I think actually had a not a prime time, but a sort of a midday speech. I don't know if you all caught it, right? But now there's I think there was recent approval or consideration of approval for the U.S. to start exporting vaccine, right? Because we have what seems to be now approaching an oversupply of vaccine. Those exports could probably go to places like India, right, that are having a hard time, or places like Peru right now that are having a really hard time from what we know. So this in India, combined with the farmers and the sort of land, issues that they've got going on there, right? This is just sort of a really bad perfect storm.
Yeah. And speaking of over here in the US, it looks like things are improving. According to this graph, our numbers are going down. Cases overview. Let's see, United States, total cases, 32.5 million. Deaths, 577,000. Worldwide, total cases 154 million, recovered 90.3 million, and deaths 3.22 million. Okay. And our last bit of news that we have here, a bit of good news. Bruce's Beach bill advances in Senate. Legislation to return land to family heads to appropriations panel. State Senate Bill 796, which will allow Los Angeles County to return the beachfront property to descendants of Willa and Charles Bruce, passed successfully out of Senate Committee on Natural Resources Water during a Tuesday hearing. The bill, written by Senator Stephen Bradford, will now go to Senate Appropriations Committee before moving to the Senate floor for a full vote. An urgency clause requires the bill to become effective immediately upon being signed by Governor Gavin Newsom. This bill is what reparations looks like, Bradford says. This bill recognizes that if you can inherit generational wealth in this country, you can inherit generational debts too. The country and the state owe a debt that has been compounding for nearly 100 years. The full Senate will need to vote on the bill by June 4th. It would then move to Assembly, which would have until September 10th to vote and send it to Newsom. Willa and Charles Bruce ran a flourishing resort for Black people on the land, providing refuge for the people who at the time had limited coastal access. The business owners and African American resort visitors from Manhattan Beach and beyond nonetheless endured harassment and terrorism from some white neighbors who didn't want Black people in the community. Manhattan Beach city officials condemned the land as well as that of other Black property owners in 1924 and took it over through eminent domain after being pressured by neighbors.
This is great news, right? This is probably some of the best news that we've had here in California for Black people, in my recent memory. Actually, to be honest with you, this is good, and yes, it's only for a very small, sort of group of Black people. It's this one family basically, right? But to see this is good, and it's a good, reminder of what's possible. I liked what Senator Bradford said. Senator Bradford, by the way, who is on the reparations task force, right, that starts on June 1st here in California. I like what he said about this is what reparations looks like. To be honest with you, this is exactly what reparations could look like, right? Return of land, right? And I like the fact that he said quite rightfully that you can inherit generational wealth, and inherit generational stolen wealth, right? And when you do that, you inherit generational debt at the same time, right? And that debt ultimately has to get paid, right? So this is definitely what reparations could look like. I think it's SB 796, if I'm not mistaken. Definitely a good thing that this got out. There was no opposition to this. We were watching the hearings, right? CJEC, Coalition for Just and Equitable California, the group that we rock with, right, and that we are members of, has been following this. Is probably gonna endorse this, but definitely has been tracking and providing support for this along the way, right? So this is something that we are very much looking at, especially as the new task force starts in June.
It's definitely encouraging news, and hope to see a lot more like it, coming in the future, the very near future. So that's our news.
Right on. Great job. I do want to mention one thing, if I could. The just a couple of things. One, this week or at least in the last week and a half or so, the Biden administration obviously introduced another big bill spending priority, right? When Biden had that address to members of Congress last week and introduced a big bill, aimed at families and jobs, et cetera, almost $2 trillion, if I'm not mistaken. This is on top of the infrastructure bill that he has out there on the table right now.
Oh, I think we lost Chris.
All right. Hopefully he'll be back soon talking about a bill. In the meantime, here we go. Here. Hey, Chris, welcome back.
Yeah, they got me up out of there.
So you were talking about the big infrastructure bill, or is this something else?
This is something else now. This is something else. They've got their next thing now, and so this is a new initiative, and it's supposed to be after the infrastructure thing, but they introduced it now, and so I just want to put that on folks' radar. And then also there was a story this week that came out of California with respect to us losing one congressional seat, right? The state of California going from, I think, 53 to 52 or 54 to 53 or 55 to 54 or something like that in terms of congressional seats based on what? The census, right? And from how our population has changed, right? And how it's counted. So that's interesting. I am concerned a little bit because I'm not sure how that affects what California is doing in terms of redistricting, for 2021. Like a lot of our cities are doing redistricting this year. So I'm not sure, my fear is that we lose some political power in a predominantly Black area, So anyway, that's something to put on folks' radar.
Okay, put that on the radar. Okay, so what we are here for today, let's just start off with a little video from the HR 40 markup session. This is Rep Swalwell. Am I pronouncing it correct? What he had to say about the potential return of Bruce Beach.
They are made whole. I understand why it may be uncomfortable if you have supported for the last 5 years a person who said that many people coming to our country from the continent of Africa are coming from S-hole countries, the same countries that many slaves against their will were brought to America. I understand why that may make you uncomfortable. I understand that if you voted to keep Confederate monuments in the Capitol, this may be an uncomfortable conversation and you would rather talk about the Supreme Court. So it really comes down to this. If you think racism, slavery was not a problem in our country, you should vote against Miss Jackson Lee's legislation. If you think Jim Crow did not exist and didn't affect people still today as it was passed down in their families and the discrimination and the hardships they've suffered, you should vote against this. If you think white supremacy does not exist and does not affect Black Americans, you should vote against this. But if you think we should do something to better understand inequality in America, the original sin, and what we can all do to make sure that we make this right, you should vote for this legislation. That's why I'm going to do that, and I yield back.
All right. Well, apparently that wasn't the clip where he talked about Bruce Beach, but he did put in into the record the Bruce Beach information, so that should be attached to the HR 40 legislation markup, which is a good thing. It's important to have allies. Okay, so let's see. Last week we got to about page 9, so I'm just going to back it up to page 8 here, and we'll just go through this last section. Doesn't look like there were any changes on these last paragraphs. I don't have them marked up. So recommend appropriate remedies in consideration of the Commission's findings on the matters described in paragraphs 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. In making recommendations, the Commission shall address, among other issues, the following questions. How such recommendations comport with international standards of remedy for wrongs and injuries caused by the state that include reparations and special measures as understood by various relevant international protocols, laws, and findings.
Yeah, that's so that's language that we don't really have any issues with that, right? There are some international standards with respect to how reparations have happened in the past, and we think it's good to be informed by that.
Okay. All right, page 9. B. How the government of the United States will offer a formal apology on behalf of the people of the United States for the perpetration of gross human rights violations and crimes against humanities on African slaves and their descendants. C. How federal laws and policies that continue to disproportionately and negatively affect African Americans as a group and those that per- perpetuate the lingering effects, materially and psychosocial, can be eliminated. D. How the injuries resulting from matters described in paragraphs 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 can be reversed and provide appropriate policies, programs, projects, and recommendations for the purpose of reversing the injuries. E. How, in consideration of the Commission's finding, any form of compensation to the descendants of enslaved Africans is calculated. F. What forms of compensation should be awarded through what instrumentalities and who should be eligible for such compensation? G. How, in consideration of the Commission's finding, what forms of satisfaction in, and then that spills over to page 10.
In addition to hey, can you hear me?
In addition to apology should be implemented in an effort towards return of dignity and racial healing and reconciliation. All right. And then I had that this was a new paragraph, but it was actually just moved from another paragraph according to my notes.
Okay.
And it reads, how in consideration of the Commission's findings, any other forms of rehabilitation or restitution to African descendants is warranted, and what the form and scope of the measures should take. All right.
So real quick here, Kim, just again, we're getting a little bit loose with the language around population, right? All right, we're getting a little bit loose here with it's just so inconsistent, right? And this is one area where we think the bill can be improved and strengthened, right? Right here it's African descendants, right, and then up above, and so H is African descendants, and E, in the same basically clause, it's descendants of enslaved Africans, right? Are those supposed to be the same people? Are those supposed to be the same thing? In C, it says African Americans as a group, right? Is that supposed to be this? I mean, so here we go, right? So this is inconsistency, and this is why this is important. These aren't just sort of, I hate to even use the word technical here, but this is a substantive critique here. These are big holes, because if you're somebody who's going to argue that it's not right for the United States to pay people who may be African American, Black, African descendants of enslaved Africans, who may fit that category, but whose ancestry does not include U.S. slavery, right? And Jim Crow. If you're someone who's going to argue that it's not right to do that, at least in this effort, right? Then and find that as a reason to oppose this, right? That's ammunition for that kind of argument, right? Because if you say, well, no, our bill doesn't do that, Well, then why does H say this and C say that and E say that, right? So here we go with the language, and we really want to get this consistent, right? We're recommending that the language be specifically centered around Black Americans who descend from persons enslaved in the United States, right? Black American descendants of U.S. slavery, African American descendants of U.S. slavery, African American U.S. slavery descendants, something like that, where it's clear, right?
Yeah, definitely. So they need to just switch that up, fix this document, switch all, put in our language, put in this language, and just one fell swoop, switch it all out. Should be easy enough to do. So we'll keep making those recommendations. So, report to Congress. The commission shall submit a written report of its findings and recommendations to the Congress not later than the date, which is 18 months after the date of the first meeting of the full commission held pursuant to Section 4F. And that went from 18 months, or went to 18 months from 1 year, correct?
Yeah, that's a change that we want to point out for the family, right? So this is a change. So basically, this gives them more time, right, to produce a report, a written report of its findings and recommendations, right? Now, what our campaign, which is centered around improving reparations legislation, right? Particularly in this case, reparations commission legislation, right? Fix HR 40, fix S 40. The idea here is that while this language is not great, right? Our thinking is that it can be made even better, right? And that is to add that the commission has to submit a final report by the 18-month deadline, right? And the word final is the key word there, right? We want to put a hard deadline on the commission's work, okay? We don't want the commission to come back in 18 months as is possible as it looks right now in this language in C, right? We don't want the commission to come back in 18 months and say, we're not done yet. Our report says we have to continue work. Now that might, there might be a need to continue work, right? But we do want to give this commission, an efficient amount of time, right? And so here we want a deadline, right? And then there's also the issue of that, we don't want to incentivize, this to go any longer than it needs to, right? Our people need the redress now, right? Yesterday. So we don't want to draw this out, but we do want to do this responsibly. And so we do want to give them enough time and enough space, right? So we're from 1 year to 18 months. So they're going to get more time, but we really want to add that word final in there.
Right. So we can have some reasonable expectation that the findings will be concluded and we can move on to implementation. All right. Section 4, membership, number and appointment. Membership. The commission shall be composed of 15 members who shall be appointed as follows.
So Kim, let's stop right there real quick if we can.
Yes.
Because that's the big change right there, right? That's one other big change, right? The commission went from 13 to 15 members, right? So this is a change, and so this is an increase in the number of members, and we'll see how that plays out in the in the next parts of this. But just to point this out for the family, this is an increase in the number of 15. So it's still odd, but the number of commissioners has now increased by 2.
Okay. And A, politically appointed members, not later than 60 days after the date of enactment of this act. 1, 3 members shall be appointed by the president. 2, 3 members shall be appointed by the Speaker of the House. And just before I move to the next page, I just want to make a note that it did go from 90 days to 60 days. So it looks like they shortened up some time here.
Yes,
I
they made the
support.
selection. Yeah, yeah, they made the selections have to happen faster. Sorry, CEO, I didn't mean to cut you off, man.
No, I'm essentially saying the same thing you are. So it shortened that time, which I support because it leaves more time to doing the work rather than just having 3 months pass by without anybody being appointed or doing anything.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. So that's a change we approve of there. All right. Moving on.
You want me to hop in
Activity.
here?
Oh, yeah.
What was that? House of Representatives? Did I make that up? In consultation with the Committee of Jurisdiction of the House. 3 members shall be appointed by the President pro tempore of the Senate in consultation with the Committee of Jurisdiction of the Senate.
Okay, hold on, CEO. Let's stop right there for a second.
Okay.
Let's talk about this. So there's some changes that are happening here, right? So one, there's this concept of the in consultation with the Committee of Jurisdiction of the Senate, right? From what I understand, I mean, from my recollection, that's new. What do you have on that, Kim?
Yes, according to my notes, that is entirely new language there.
Yes. So who is this? So one, what does this in consultation mean? And two, who is this Committee of Jurisdiction of the Senate? I think we can get some clues actually from the hearing, the markup session rather, the markup hearing a few weeks ago when Representative Jackson Lee was. I mean, it almost came at a point of being on defense when she was sort of talking about how members of Congress would be involved in the selection process, of the commissioners, and that particularly the Judiciary Committee would be involved. I think she's talking. I think this is talking about the Judiciary Committee, and particularly the Committee on Civil Rights, on Civil Liberties, and the Constitution. Right? It's subcommittee.
Okay, so they're going to have to consult with this group. Each of the representatives selected to pick members needs to consult with this committee on their selections. Is that how it's going to work?
Did we lose
Did we,
Chris?
did we lose him? Okay, we can let him back in. Okay, he's back.
I got kicked out. As soon as I started getting good, I gotta get up out of here, right?
Happens every time, bro.
let me not even say no more on this other than the Committee of Jurisdiction we're talking about is probably the Judiciary Committee, and in consultation means with discussions with the committee and in particular its staff. So yeah, sorry about that, CEO.
All right, CEO, you gonna?
I'll keep going. Line 7. B, subject to matter experts. Not later than 60 days after the appointment of the director under Section 6A, 6 members who shall be identified and appointed by the director and approved by a majority of the members appointed under subparagraph A. Such individuals shall be from the major civil society and reparations organizations that have historically championed the cause of reparatory justice.
Okay, see, I'm gonna jump in here, right? Yeah, Kim too, right?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that it did go to, they added the 60 days there, and then on the paragraph before, 3 members shall be appointed by the president pro tempore of the Senate in consultation with the Committee of Jurisdiction of the Senate. It looks like that went from 1 to 3 members that the president pro tempore is going to be picking.
Yes, that happened, and yeah, so the president of the Senate, the president pro tempore of the Senate, who who is that right now? Who would that be right now? Is that the vice president, or is that the Senate leader? Are we talking about, or is that some other position? From my thinking, it's either the vice president, who I think is the president of the Senate, or the Senate leader, or maybe I'm wrong, right? So let's find out who that is. But let's talk about really quickly what else changed here, right? So this quote on 60 days after the appointment of the director under 6A, right? Okay, who is this director? This director is new. This director person is new. We didn't have a director person before. Okay, and we're going to get to 6A, but that's just a thing to make a point about, right? That's going to strike you as something that's new, right? And this director has, some influence here, right? The director will make appointments themselves, right? And so the director has to make the appointments from what they call major civil society and reparations organizations that have historically championed the cause for reparatory justice, right? Okay, that's language that we have made some recommendations on strengthening, really, and really it's to make it more inclusive of newer generations of reparations advocates, and also a larger public and a larger reparations advocacy community, right? So we recommended changes to the.
And he's down again.
The trolls, as Moya would say. Okay, so
Let me well, he gets back in because we know he's coming back for more.
he's
Uh,
here.
Then I'll let him
What
go.
were you gonna say, Sia?
When Chris is done, I have some information on President Pro Tempore.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I'm not gonna give up.
Never.
I'm not giving up. I don't care how many times it goes. I'm coming back. And I'll just wrap up and say, we think just sort of opening that up more. That part of the clause about historically championed, etc. Right? Either by removing historically, or adding and currently, something like that. Right? So that's all.
Okay. Just to jump in with some info that I quickly Googled, the president essentially of the Senate is the vice president. That's Kamala Harris. But when Kamala is not there, then they elect essentially a senator to take over those responsibilities.
And so it went from 1 to 3. Now she'll be picking 3 members.
The current and there's currently an incumbent President Pro Tempore. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. But since January 20th, it's been Patrick Leahy.
Democrat.
Mm-hmm.
Democrat Patrick Leahy, powerful Democrat, to be honest with you. So that's very interesting, right? Very, very interesting, right? Because now, one, it's going to matter who controls the Senate, obviously, right? And then it's also going to matter who is in the White House, right? So it's essentially the administration's picks, the total administration picks, right, from the president, and then the president of the Senate, which is the vice president, is at 6 now. So 6 out of the 15, because you had the president's 3, and then the VP's 3. Okay, so just something to keep in mind here. That's very, very interesting, if you ask me.
Any projections on how long this could even take before they get to the selection process?
So I think there's some language that we went through, right, that says that, one, obviously the legislation would have to be enacted first, right? So it has to pass as law.
Right. So that's what I'm trying to get out. I mean, any projections on how long that could take?
Oh, that's a political answer. Like that, the answer to that is probably unknowable because we don't know how this is going to unfold politically yet, right? So it definitely depends on what a lot of different people do. A lot of different things happen, right? It's almost an unknowable answer, right? Because it's not on any particular timeline other than a political timeline. So let's say it goes to the floor. The HR 40 goes to the floor sometime this year. right? Let's say by the middle of the year, and then it gets out and gets passed. It has to go to the Senate, or its Senate bill has to move, right, forward. How long is that going to take? That's a political question, right? Then, like, how long would it take for an administration to sign it, right? There's some question on whether that would happen or not, right? So really, it's a political answer. There's no real noble way. The soonest it could happen is as soon as there's a political will for it. But that's almost an unnoble answer.
So we could very well be into another administration by the time they're making that making the selections.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think that it's probably a good idea. So, like, for example, the Fix HR 40 campaign exists for at least the 117th Congress, but we're really positioning, our campaign, is really positioning itself to, work to improve reparations legislation wherever we find it. So we expect to be here for a considerable amount of time, not just working to shepherd through good reparations legislation, but to see it actually, paid out and happen in real life for people. So, but yeah, this is a multi-administration fight, no matter what, right? What happens and how fast, that's going to be up to us and a lot of other people. But this is definitely a multi-administration fight, and what we're asking for is multi-generational anyway. So we should expect to. I mean, there's not going to be one point where we're going to say, okay, fam, we won, we're done. Let's just go for focus on what we're going to do with our reparations. No, like there's going to be a sustained commitment here that's going to be necessary to make sure that we get this right.
Okay. All right. CEO, did you want to continue with qualifications, which is they added the header of qualifications. So what are these qualifications they talking about?
All members of the commission shall be persons who are specially qualified to serve on the commission by virtue of their education, training, activism, or experience, particularly in the field of African American studies and respiratory justice. Am I saying that right?
Reparatory.
Reparatory.
Yeah. Respiratory justice is, lungs and all that.
Number 3, limitations. No person who is a member of Congress or an officer or employee of the federal government or any state or local government may serve as a member of the commission.
Now that's an entirely new section. All right, yeah, they added the limitation section to this.
Yes, and it's interesting because that's different from. So, for example, think about our task force here, right, in California. We've already got. I think it's stacked right now with. I wouldn't say the word stacked, but I would say there's definitely some good representation in terms of number of elected officials, right? I think it might be all elected officials right now. Senator Bradford, Monica Montgomery Stepp, so city councilwoman in San Diego. Maybe she's former city councilwoman, or maybe she still sits. Who else have we got? We've got Reginald Jones Sawyer, right? And we've got, I think those are the only picks that are announced yet. So those are all like elected officials so far. I like the fact that, by the way, 2 of those folks are on the California Legislative Black Caucus, right? That's a way to ensure that black folks have a channel. I'm not saying it's a channel that we use very effectively yet, but a channel into this task force, right? That we can talk through the various black caucuses, right? So, but yeah, that's something to think about, right? That's very, 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 very different.
Should we be relieved that the Black Caucus won't find the Congressional Black Caucus won't find
No,
their way onto the.
no, no. That's a bad thing. And I know we malign. I think sometimes we're a little bit too mean, to be honest with you, with respect to the Congressional Black Caucus, absent any.
Okay, he'll be back. Don't worry, everybody. We'll just move on though here to.
This was going in, and then oh, there he goes. All right.
Okay, so we shouldn't be mean to the Congressional Black Caucus. Give them a chance.
You want me to pick up 12?
Sure, go ahead and take it.
B, terms. The term of the office of members shall be for the life of the commission. A vacancy in the commission shall not affect the powers of the commission and shall be filled in the same manner in which the original appointment was made. C, quorum. 7 members of the commission shall constitute a quorum, but a lesser number may hold hearings. 9, vacancies. Any vacancy on the commission shall 1, not affect the powers of the commission, and 2, be filled in the same manner in which the original appointment was made. C, chair and vice chair. There shall be a chair and a vice chair of the commission selected jointly by the majority leader of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives in consultation with the committees of jurisdiction. The term of office of each shall be the life of the commission. And what is that? Install? What is that word?
Initial.
Ooh, my dyslexia. Initial meeting of full commission. The chair shall call an initial meeting of the full commission not later than 45 days after the appointment of all members under subsection A1B.
Okay, let's see if I can make any sense of my notes here. Well, on this quorum question, line 6, 7 members of the commission shall constitute a quorum. That is the same number as when it was a 13-member commission. Does that make a difference?
I feel like it does. Typically, your quorum number stays proportional. So if you increase the amount of people who are there, your quorum will need to rise. So if there are now 15 people on the committee, you need less than half of them to essentially have a meeting or to call a vote or to make any changes or anything like that. To make any official moves, you need less than half of the people present. So that can be used for good or that can be used for bad. So I personally think that it should be increased to make sure that the people who you are putting on the commission are present when doing business and are allowed to aid their voice and their vote in making decisions.
Okay.
Bingo. By the way, I changed on my phone, so hopefully I don't get kicked out of here. Bingo. So, I want to clip what you just said and put that on repeat. This was something that we discussed this in the prep meeting for this, right? So this definitely came up, and CO, you're absolutely right. This I think might be actually a mistake that they made, actually, or maybe an oversight that they didn't increase the quorum, and so this is definitely something that we want to raise with the people who are running the bill and the bill authors and the other stakeholders, right? This is potentially a error that could impact the deliberations, the decisions, the kinds of proposals, right? The kind of support that the task force has, right? If less than half of the members are making decisions, right? then that's then like it's not I think we want to strive for like having as much like consensus as possible, right? Especially on something like this, right? We don't unless we want to see like half of the task force do battle with the other half, and be having some sort of you know dysfunction, right? We don't. I'm not saying we need full agreement all the time, but we do need to have a functional, I think, task force and a functional system of decision making, right? And that decision making is not just with respect to you know what the task force decides in terms of proposals. There's all kind of decisions that the task force is going to have to make in terms of staff and administration and meetings and hearings, right? So this is something that I think is a mistake, and I think, and this is definitely something that we're going to point out. The bill got weaker by this, so definitely something to point out. By the way, there's also we also want to point out this stuff about the chair and the vice chair. That's also new, right? That's also new stuff. But the big deal really, well, one of the other big deal, this lack of the increase. By the way, the Senate Majority Leader has now been added to the mix here, right? That's different than the Senate Pro Temp or the Senate President. Right? The Majority Leader is the leader of the person is the leader of the party that controls the Senate and is a senator. Okay, right now it's Chuck Schumer. Okay, of New York. We're very familiar with Chuck. So now the Senate leader has some control over what happens with respect to this task force. So you see, we're getting deeper into Congress here, deeper into these these sort of higher level appointing authorities. Definitely something to pay attention to, and this is definitely all of these changes we don't have nations for at all yet, and this is something that we're going to be pulling out from some of the people behind this bill, right? Let me not go on a super rant here, but I'll say it was last thing. One of the things that we've had, I think, righteous criticism on with respect to this campaign is the lack of inclusiveness of a lot of different community voices, or the more community voices like ours, right? And that's an issue here, right? So when there's no community or there's no engagement, right? Then there's no talking, right? So why do you do something? Why do you make these changes? Why do you support these changes? Right? And do you owe an explanation to the actual people who are going to be the recipients of what you're doing, right? There's almost no community dialogue around this, or at least it's not as good as it could be, right? So that's another thing to point out here. Let me shut up and just to say that CO is spot on. Have this different stuff around the chair and the vice chair, and now we have the Senate Majority Leader in the mix, and the Speaker of the House gets another power here too, right?
Okay, and then my little note here just says, in reference to section F here, change from president to chair. So the chair shall call the initial meeting of the full commission. That was going to be the president making that call, and it changed from 120 days to 45 days, not later than 45 days after the appointment of all members under subsection. So that's good that they're getting right to it in 45 days and not extending it out for 120 days.
So I remember that we just read that the first 3 members have to be appointed up to 60 days after the director is appointed. But there's no cap on when all of them need to be seated. So there is a possibility, unless I'm reading this wrong, there is a possibility that that could be dragged out. And even though it's 45 days, like the last person could be appointed, if it's for a year, like at month 10.
Right. And
Is
and
that,
I'm
or am I
and
misreading that or misunderstanding?
no, I just pointed to we have to look at, and I'm trying to think as you were talking about this. I was trying to think, where do we see any language that maybe put a cap on when all of the members elected, but I don't remember hearing that. Right. So
Yeah.
that's something that we do have to look at. Actually, thank you for that, CEO. That's another, spot on. Right. That's really something that we have to look at.
Okay. And let's just take a quick look, a little throwback to the markup hearing, just as a little palate cleanser. Give us a little break. Let me go grab some water. Let's hear what Rep. Burgess Owens had to say.
The guns of the blacks who were given this property throughout South Carolina, Florida, and Georgia. And then they came back and took away their property. The KKK, Democrats. Jim Crow, Democrats. And guess what? The KKK was actually eliminated in 1985 until Woodrow Wilson, Democrat president, decided to bring it back with Birth of the Nation that he showed in the White House. And a few years later, it was Democrats who burned Wall Street down, Democratic KKK. Slavery was and still is an evil. Whether it's 883 years of history in our nation, or the prior 3,000 years of history, or the presence today around the world. Reparation is divisive. It speaks to the fact that we are a hapless, hopeless race that never did anything but wait for white people to show up and help us. And it's a falsehood. It's demeaning my parents' generation, that one of the greatest generations in the history of our country. We have a history of millions of middle class and wealthy Black Americans throughout our 20th century who achieved their dreams. Instead of a theory, I'd like to share the reality of a race whose history of success in America has been stolen, and what we can do to repay that damage. I grew up in the Deep South, Tallahassee, in the 50s and 60s, where we believed in commanding respect, not begging or asking for it. We did that by meritocracy, by winning, not just in sports and entertainment, but in every discipline: math, science, exploration, innovation, farming, enterprise. We had a reputation, as the Asian community today has a reputation of winning respect. That was the Black community back in the 60s. We led our country in the growth of the middle class, led our country in men matriculating from college, led our country in men matriculating from college, from men committed to marriage over 70%, the percentage of entrepreneurs over 40%. That 40% equated to 50%, 50 to 60% of Black Americans across our country, from New York to Tallahassee to Texas to California, part of the middle class. I grew up in that middle class in the 50s. And believe me, they were not sitting back waiting for white people to give them a break. They were making it.
Woo, that boy can make my blood boil.
Man, I literally
Yo.
went around the block, jogged, and came back, and he was still talking. I was like, "Is he still talking?"
Yo, he went in at that hearing.
That was, what, I was just thinking about that Godfrey skit that he just did. I don't know if you saw it on his Instagram, the comedian Godfrey.
I was just watching that before everybody jumped on. It was funny.
Yo, that's exactly what I just heard. Right? Check that out if y'all haven't seen it. Shout out to Godfrey, the comedian. Does anybody else want to jump in before I get it? All right. Yeah,
So we can move on, but go ahead, CEO.
Oh, I mean, I was gonna comment on how ridiculous most of what he said was. Like the taking this conversation and moving it to it's about hard work rather than it's about being systematically locked out of wealth. Like, it's not about people's grit. It's not about the folks who could survive. It's not about like any of that. And it's great that his family was able to come up. I know at another point he talks about his his father being a recipient of the GI Bill. But it's not about that. That's a huge bait and switch in trying to like play on people's emotional, well, I didn't get a handout, so why should anybody else mentality. When really it's about a debt that is old. We already know all of this, so I'm trying not to hop on my soapbox, but that just made my blood boil. I'm gonna step back.
No, I mean, I agree with you. And it's always been this narrative. I mean, we've always heard it, you got to work harder. You got to work twice as hard to get half as far. And, there's the problem right there. Why should you have to work harder, twice as hard to get half as far? I mean, grit is great and all that, but come on. All right. Let's move on to page 13. Yamoya, since you joining us, do you want to take this one?
Kim, you just gonna throw me out there, huh?
Right on the spot. I can take it. If you want to take another one, I got it.
No, it's all good. I'll take it. You want me to get 14? You want to get a CO and I'll get 14?
Okay, let's do that.
I'll get 14. All
right. Section 5, powers of the commission. Hearing and evidence. The commission may, for purposes of carrying out this act, 1. Hold hearings, sit and act at times and places, take testimony, receive evidence, and administer oaths, and 2. Require by subpoena or otherwise the attendance and testimony of witnesses and the production of books, records, correspondence, memoranda, papers, and documents. B. Subpoenas. 1. Service. Subpoenas issued under this section may be served by any person designated by the commission. 2. Enforcement. In general, in the case of contumacy, contumacy? Or failure to obey a subpoena issued under this section, the United States District Court of the Judicial District in which the subpoenaed person resides is served or may be found, or where the subpoena is returnable, may issue an order requiring such person to appear at any designated place to testify or to produce documentary or other evidence. Any failure to obey the order of the court may be
I just want to point out that the enforcement section is new before we go on. So that is new language over here in the settings under section 5, powers of the commission, hearings and evidence. Evidence was changed from sessions. So these are, what did you call the incidental changes again, Chris?
Technical changes. This wouldn't as a technical change though. This will be right. Because this fleshes out. It adds a whole new section and fleshes out. The powers are subpoena.
Okay, so these are technical changes. All right, so that was added.
And
move on.
I'm sorry, Mario, go ahead.
I was going to say before we go on to page 14, I just want to read what contumacy means. It means to obey or comply with authority, especially a court order or summons. So I learn every day. I wish I had the vocabulary like that, but I quickly looked that up just so we're all on the same page of what that means. So there you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate the fact that this commission has subpoena power because it gives the commission teeth. Because otherwise, they could request documentation, they could request information from individuals or testimony, and then people wouldn't have to show up. They could decide to buy in, to play along, to do such. But this makes them like they legally have to. Essentially, they have to support and show up for whatever the commission is asking for. So I'm glad they have subpoena power.
That's a good thing. All right, 14.
All right, let's do it. Okay. Punished by the court as a contempt of that court. B. Additional enforcement. Sections 102 through 104 of the revised statutes of the United States, 2 USC 192 through 194, shall apply in the case of any failure of any witness to comply with any subpoena or to testify when summoned under the authority of this section. Issuance. A subpoena may be issued under the section only by the agreement of the chair and the vice chair, or by the affirmative vote of a majority of the commission, a majority being present. Contracting. To the extent or in amounts provided in appropriations sets. I think that is that right? Or it's acts, I'm sorry, appropriations acts, and subject to the applicable laws and regulations. The commission may enter into contracts with government entities, private entities, or persons for goods or services, including for conducting research or surveys, the preparation of reports, and other activities necessary for the discharge of the duties of the commission.
I was just saying additional enforcement is a good thing. We'll go on to page 15. Information from federal agencies and other entities. The commission may secure directly from any department, agency, bureau, board, commission, office, independent establishment, or instrumentality of the United States any information related to any inquiry of the commission conducted under this act, including information of a confidential nature, which the commission shall maintain in a secure manner. Each such department, agency, bureau, board, commission, office, independent establishment, or instrumentality shall furnish such information directly to the commission upon request. Administrative support services upon the request of the commission. The administrator of general services shall provide to the commission on a reimbursable basis the administrative support services necessary for the commission to carry out its responsibilities under this act, and 2, other federal departments and agencies may provide to the commission any administrative support services as may be determined by the head of such department or agency to be advisable and authorized by law. So what that sounds like to me is that they'll just be able to pull people to help out on this with the commission task and duties from the general services, people who are already staffed, so they don't need to hire new staff for this.
Yeah, and there was something there's something connected to this that I think we're going to point out, or maybe we have already. But with respect to who can work for the commission, and also who can be a member, but particularly about who can work for the commission, right? This allows, like you said, them to pull staff, but this staff paid, right? Or at least the staff isn't paid by the commission. It sounds like, right? It's paid, basically by what we're already getting paid. So this is something to as we're thinking about staffing, compensation, etc. Kim, are you talking?
Oh, I was muted. No, I wasn't saying anything. So that is under federal departments. Okay. So we'll just move on.
I'll take this one. F, donations of goods and services. The commission may accept, use, and dispose of gifts or donations of services or property. Interesting. Postal Services. The commission. Does someone say something?
Nope. Go ahead. Sorry.
My bad. Postal Services. The Commission may use the United States mail in the same manner and under the same conditions as departments and agencies of the United States. H. Powers of subcommittees, members, and agents. Any subcommittee member or agent of the Commission may, if authorized by the Commission, take any action which the Commission is authorized to take by this action. Section 6. Administrative Provisions. Director. The Commission shall have a director who shall be not later than 60 days after the appointment of all members appointed under Section 4A1A, jointly selected by the chair and vice chair, subject to approval by a majority vote of all members. Staff. The chair and the vice chair may jointly appoint additional personnel as may be necessary to enable the Commission to carry out its functions. C. Accountability of certain civil service laws. The director.
Hold on, Sarah, real quick. Let's. I mean, maybe we stop this director, right? Because that's where the director, is born, right? Even though there's mention of it above, right? There's mention of it, membership section, right? But this
Yeah,
is
I was going to say that this is the first time I caught it when they had it as a header here, since it has a highlight on it. I didn't even pick up on the director language they slipped in earlier.
Right. And they reference 6A or something. This is so one. You actually pointed to something that we have to talk about too, right? Which is the ability to accept gifts and donations, right? I think you used the. That's very interesting. Okay, so let's draw a circle around that, right?
Because I think that's just asking for bribery. It's asking for kickbacks. Like, typically, like I know in business, you can't do that, or you can't receive something over $100 or such because it encourages individuals to like come up essentially. So I'm actually quite curious as to why they even put that in here versus not adding it at all. And then it would be. So I would suggest that that we add the note, not like the Commission may not accept or use or dispose of gifts or donations, yada yada yada.
Yeah, that sounds. I feel like I think it's interesting and curious. I know we're going deep into this, but I think right. This may be something that we overlooked, right? Why and what's the thinking behind allowing gifts? What's who was asking for that, and what and it just doesn't sound right, and we're not, it doesn't have to be where we're like, or accusing people of stealing or going to steal, right? But we just don't want any appearance or any perception of any type of corruption, right? So anyway, sorry.
No kickbacks, no favoritisms, none of that.
Yeah, right. More like grifts. All right, I'll let you continue.
What's the highlighted comment? Oh, it just says added agents. What's that?
Yeah, added I don't know where that sounds, but Chris, maybe you can explain to us what an agent is. It's not the agent that we typically think of.
No, it's not the word agent that we throw around about each other, So it's this is another in a way of the task force. It's a new type of personnel, right? So one we have now these GSA, these government service employees, as also potential new types of personnel, right, for the task force. Sort of pool of labor to pull from. And then now we have this agent category that's being created, right? Where there's this other class of personnel now who know too much about other than expect to what we expect from general agent sort of a behavior, right? So there's another class of employees, and now this is again, I mean, to be honest with you, like it sounds like we've added a lot of bureaucracy to this, and a lot of like more red tape around, in this. Maybe maybe it's good plumbing, but maybe I don't know. I have some mixed feelings about some, but that's absent any explanation really of what's the need for some of this. But anyway.
Cool.
Think
I have a-
you stopped at applicability?
Yeah, I actually have a question about the director. So previously, they said that the director within 60 days has to appoint at least 2 people. But here it's saying, and I could be reading this wrong, so help me out. But here it's saying that the director is appointed. The commission shall have the director who shall be no later than 60 days after the appointment of all members appointed under section da 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 da. So how can the director be appointed after everyone is brought on, but the director has to appoint the first 2 people within 60 days?
Yeah, that's a good question. Maybe let's think about that, right? If that's true, that's a contradiction, right? That would have to be changed. Um let's let the other session. Sorry, go ahead. I'll take a look and see if I can pull something.
Okay, I'll keep reading.
Makes sense of that.
Hey, Chris, while you're looking at that, bro, I do have the call lines up right now. You are breaking up a tad bit. I don't know if anybody else can hear that Chris is breaking up. So if you want to call in the call line, we can try it to patch you in. But if we want to just try to, I know we got only 2 more pages. We can probably struggle through it the last 2. But if you want to try the call line, we can try the call line too, bro. Just FYI.
Yes, sir.
All right, I'm gonna jump in with C here. Applicability of certain civil services, so civil service laws. The director and the staff of the commission may be appointed without regard to the provision of Title V, United States Code governing appointments in the page 17, please.
Oh, I think Kim, we're on to the next section on page 17. Booyah.
Competitive service and may be paid without regard to the provision of Chapter 51 and Subchapter 3 of Chapter 53 of such title relating to classifications and general schedule pay rates, except that no rate of pay fixed under the paragraph may exceed the equivalent of that payable for a person at level 5 of the executive schedule under section 5316 of Title V, United States Code. Any additional appointment under this section shall be treated as an employee for purposes of Chapter 63, 81, 83, 84, 85, 87, 89, 89A, 89B, and 90 of that title. Detailees. Any federal government employee may be detailed to the commission without reimbursement from the commission and shall detailee and such detailee. Am I saying that word right?
Yep.
Detailee. It just sounds funny. So retain the rights, status, and privileges of his or her regular employment without interruption. E. Consultant services. The commission is authorized to procure the services of expert and consultants in accordance with Section 3109 of Title V, United States Code, but at rates not to exceed the daily rate paid a person occupying a position at level 4 of the executive schedule under Section 5315 of Title V, United States Code. Compensation and travel expenses, compensation. Each member of the commission may be compensated at a rate not to exceed, probably.
Let's stop there. Do we want to go over the calculation of pay rates here, what we're looking at as far as level 5?
Yeah, you want to take that, Chris, or you want me to go in?
Go for it, fam.
All right. So as you can see, family, there's different levels, and I think we went over this. As you can see, I think on the GS 18 code, which was the previous I guess number system that the federal government used, it has been updated since then, and now they're actually going like the higher, or like so basically 5 going up to 1, as you can see it on the diagram, is basically the higher pay scale that you get. So level 5 is 161,000 approximately, and level 4 is 172. So it looks like the closer you get to that level 1, the higher the pay scale and the pay rate is. So it looks like for this particular commission, if you're at a level 4, you're gonna be making some nice change around 161,000, and level 5. I'm sorry, level 5, 161,000, and then up 1 level to level 4, you're going to be making $172,000 in compensation. So that's the pay rate. But Chris, you want to elaborate on that?
So six figures either way, and this is something that we have critiqued of what we think could be better about this bill. Right? One of the things is that we think these commissioners should not any salary all. To be honest with you, we think that there should be paid, and obviously reasonable expenses for everyone should be taken care of. Salary, we think that the commissioner should forego any salary for. And this really is a service. It really is a national service, right? And so we think it would be in the best interest of the actual commission and ultimately the proposals that there not be any compensation. Plus, if you're talking compensation, and then you're also talking these gifts that are allowable, right? And then you're also talking, the possibility of not having a hard deadline, right, on when the report is due. Then I think we have some of the ingredients of a bad mix, and a potential for the appearance and perception of something toward corruption, something toward untoward practices, right? And we don't want even the perception of that. We're not accusing anyone of being a bad character at all, but what we are saying is that we don't want even there to be the perception of that, and we don't want incentives for that either.
Yeah. I think this is where I personally sort of stray away from the pack a little bit, because I really believe that I'm a firm believer that if you are doing work, you should be paid for your work. I do not agree with these salaries. I think the salaries, regardless of who it is, should be comparable to what the average person in America or in that particular state is making. So it really should be minimum wage, or it should be, a living wage at the very least, because this is a year of time that we're asking people to put in. And that means that they don't have that time to be working on something else. Or it means that something else that is paying them may get their time and attention, and they may not be able to do it here. But I do think these six-figure salaries are just bloated, and it's ridiculous. I really think it should be closer to 75,000.
Yeah, I'm not mad at that, CO, to be honest with you, and that's an area where I would be able and compromise. If you were to say we'll make your deal, and let's say we'll add a final date, and we'll get rid of the gifts. If you drop the recommendation around the salary, and we'll also reduce the salaries. I so I'm not mad at all.
Yeah, those the gifts definitely gotta go.
All right, so we are in the home stretch. Why don't we take a quick listen at what reparations hype man Rep Jeffries had to say?
We're not going to move on because after slavery, Jim Crow and the rise of the KKK and the lynching epidemic and Plessy versus Ferguson and Black Wall Street in 1921 destroyed. Why? Because Black prosperity was viewed as a threat to white supremacy. So no, we're not simply going to move on. And when the Great Depression struck, African Americans were hit the hardest and we received the least amount of support. Why? Because yes, Southern Dixiecrats insisted that in the New Deal, African Americans would be excluded, while other Americans were helped. Excluded from Social Security, because most of us were domestic workers, or many of us, and agricultural workers, excluded from Social Security, excluded from unemployment insurance, and excluded from the federally subsidized loans and insured loans that were issued. So between 1934 and 1962, 98% of the federally insured loans that were issued by the federal government were issued to white Americans. That's how suburbs were created. So no, sir, we're not simply going to move on. We're not going to move on because with respect to the GI Bill, more than 1 million African American veterans were systematically excluded from its benefits. When they came back from war, just like everyone else, built the great American middle class. So we're not simply going to move on. We're not going to move on because in the aftermath of the civil rights movement, which effectively ended in 68 and 71 mass incarceration, and the war on drugs started disproportionately targeting African Americans and Latinos. So yes, this is a great country. We've come a long way. We still have a long way to go. We're not perfect, but we're marching to a more perfect union, and that's what HR 40 is all about. The least we can do is study these historic wrongs. That's the least that this Congress can do. I yield back.
Jeffries was talking.
Get it, brother.
Jeez.
Get it.
All right, I'm here for it. We're not moving on, but we are moving forward, to a full House vote. So that is something. All right. So we'll just rewind a little bit. Oops. Hey, y'all. Rewind a little bit to F. Compensation and travel expenses. Compensation. Each member of the commission may be compensated at a rate not to exceed the daily equivalent or the annual rate of basic pay in effect for a position at level 4 of the executive schedule under section 5315 of Title V, United States Code, for each day during which that member is engaged in the actual performance of the duties of the commission. 2, travel expenses. While away from their homes or regular places of business in the performance of service of the commission, members of the commission shall be allowed travel expenses, including per diem in lieu of subsistence, in the same manner as persons employed intermittently in the government service are allowed expenses under section 5703B of Title V, United States Code. Non-applicability of Federal Advisory Committee Act. The Federal Advisory Committee Act 5 USC App shall not apply to the commission. Section 7. So we need to figure out what that is, what's not going to apply to the commission. Section 7, termination. The commission shall terminate 90 days after the date of which the commission submits its report to the Congress under Section 3C. Section 8, authorization of appropriations to carry out the provisions of this act. There are authorized to be appropriated $20 million. And in the old version, that was a $12 million allotment. Okay, So do we want to unpack this
another,
page?
Kicked it up another 8. Huh.
Yeah, let's talk about the money, right? Let's talk about the money, right? So one, the commission goes from 12 million to 20 million, so it goes up by $8 million. You could make the argument that because the length of time of the commission got extended, right, from 12 to 18 months, that's probably why, you know, if it's going to operate longer, it's going to need more money to operate, that sort of thing. So that makes sense, right? But and it's a testament actually to what I think, or how it's different from, for example, in a place like let's say Evanston, right? Let's look at like how like that local mission actually provided a potential a potential model for how to improve this legislation, right? It didn't work, even though it, you know, we you know, there have been criticism from groups on the ground on what Evanston did, you know, or how it's doing it, right? The one thing that Evanston did was money up front, right? Evanston said put a certain amount of money up front. We don't think it's going to be going to be enough for all of what we're going to put up front. But we're going to put up some money up front, and then we're going to decide what to do with it. So, you know, as we go, you know. Whereas here we're saying, you know, we're going to put money to study what we're going to do with it, right? I think there's a to write language into this legislation around this particular part that, you know, does some of what Evanston did, you know, in terms of good stuff and around putting some money up front. I would like to see that, you know, in updated version of this bill, and I want us to think creatively about how we make that happen.
Yeah, if I can interject, Chris, another question that we should ask is, $20 million really worth the actual studying, you know, of the task force? You know, I mean, does this bill need 20 million? You know, and that's the biggest question that should be asked.
Well, that's the question that the Republicans were certainly asking.
Yeah, they were asking that. Well, I mean, just like look at salaries, right? If it's for level 4s and level 5s, right? About a year, you know, year and 18 months. So you got almost 2 years of people, you know, people being paid, you know, so that's a big change right there. That's, you know, so that's a big part of it. You know, I'm not sure what the math, but everybody got, you know, 170, you know, right? And then talking, you know, 15 people. That's millions of dollars in salary right there. Obviously, you've got travels, you know, you've got hearings, you've got reimbursements for this and that and all this stuff. It's $20 million worth it? Is $20 million a lot of money with respect to commission and task force? Let's come back to that, right? Because the 9/11 task force cost, by the way. Right. You know, and also how much the Japanese task force commission cost. Right. So those are also outstanding questions that we need to answer in order to make the comparison.
That wraps up our reading of the bill. It's getting late, but I will just play for, you know, just for nostalgia. Let's throw it back to the hearing one more time and see what the vote tally looked like.
The clerk will report.
Mr. Chairman, there are 25 ayes and 17 noes.
The bill is approved. Members will have 2 days to submit views. Without objection, the bill will be reported as a single amendment, nature of a substitute incorporating all adopted amendments, and the staff is authorized.
Oh, okay. All right. So
that Cory Booker behind
that's what matters.
Was that Cory Booker in that mask behind Jerry Nadler?
It looked like him.
Yeah. Or maybe one of those staffers, right? Cool. Those are some interesting. We heard a lot of trash from the Republicans. The 17, all the Republicans voted no, right? And I think all the Democrats voted yes, right? I was for this. So that means that the bill got out. The outcome, right? The bill got out. I mean, it's out of committee. Now it's headed to the floor of the House for the first time ever. That 25% vote is a historic vote. There's never been vote ever. Okay.
Yep.
That vote never happened ever before. So that so again, we do want to say, I think we said this last week, we really too, that this is a historic time for reparations. No matter where you come out on the bills, even if you hate HR 40 or S40, right? You have to acknowledge that we're closer than we've been Civil War.
Yeah. So all of the Democrats voted yes, and then the Republicans, they were pretty much no across the board, but 2 did abstain. So maybe those abstains will turn to yeses.
Yeah, that's good news. So it's not no, it's maybe yet, but that's a good sign. It's a good sign, and that's the sign we're gonna need. So the Democrats can get this the House by just their own will. Right? They don't need Republicans to pass. Democrats have a I think it's either a 6 or a 2 seat lead. I think it's a 6 seat lead. In the House. So that means there are 6 more Democrats than Republicans, and you only need 50% to say yes to something, to pass something. So because we have a majority. I mean, if I was a Democrat, then that would mean that the Democrats could pass anything. So that's the case here. So it's good to see some Republican reluctance to, but that's really what we're going to need to see more of when we get to the Senate, right? Or as we're in now. We're going to see Republicans being open-minded, and we're going to need all the Democrats to, so yeah, and the Senate is going to be tougher, I think, for us, and the Senate is tied up right now. If this bill doesn't a Senate floor vote before the 2022 midterms, then we don't know what the Senate looks like, right? And we don't know what the House looks like, to be honest. So yeah, all these things are things to be thinking about.
Well, I guess, Chris, the question that I have is, at this point, will HR 40, or I can't remember what the other bill, I think it's like S1083 or something like that, on the Senate side, actually pass before 2022 elections? I mean, how are we looking there?
That's up. That was a similar question to what Kim asked earlier in terms of what the timeline is. That's a political can't know to that because there's no those are based on decisions of when people want to put the bill on the floor versus when they don't, versus when they think it's most likely to pass, versus have the votes when they have the enough votes. What its timeline is. The White House thinks is going to matter too. To be honest with you, right? The White House, but it's also in this, right? The White House own priorities with respect to the Democratic Party and legislation, right? And so that's so there's no knowable answer to that right now. In terms of when this thing ultimately gets to the Senate and pass the Senate. The thing to say though is that there is a there's an incentive for Democrats to do it sooner rather, right? Because the closer you get to, and this is my own theory, is going to get tested, right? The closer you get to the midterms, the less likely anything's going to happen. And it's better to do stuff when you know you have the political power, which is right now, and you have somewhat of a political will, and you have kind of a popular president and a popular, right? Like Joe Biden is not popular, like with us, mostly, right? But he's popular among the public, like generally. He has like a 60, 50, plus 50% popularity rating. So he's got some, and that translates into what the Democrats can do, right? So all that to say, I don't know.
And I guess the thing that we as advocates, especially for reparations, I think we should try to focus on is trying to convince the Congress to pass it as early as possible, at least to form the task force as early as possible before the midterms, especially the end of 2021. Like, there really should be a task force way before 2021. Actually, there is no excuse. Like, we should have got reparations like 400 years ago. That's a whole nother topic in consideration. But yeah, I mean, I don't know as much as the people who are advocates for reparations, how much we can do and galvanize the people when it's kind of difficult, when even the mainstream. I mean, you're starting to hear more tidbits about it. I do hear it on NPR a little bit. They're talking about reparations, but it seems like a lot of people are just really focusing on, which is good, on police reform. But I really think we need to, start pushing, on the reparations movement, like, what you're involved in with the Fix HR40.org and so forth. So, hopefully, we can come up with some kind of, media marketing, like no reparations, no vote, or something like that for the midterms, just to put some pressure on these Congress people. Because if we're relying on the Republicans based on how they voted in the markup session, it's not looking good.
No, you're right. And let me say one last thing. I know we're trying to get out of here, but I think this is important discussion, right? So so yeah, like I'm with I do think, like I think that we want to get the language right. We don't, right? Anything passing isn't right what we're saying, right? So before any pushes to accelerate the pace of the passage of the legislation, right, make it happen faster, right? We got to get the language right, and that's what obviously the work is about. And by the way, fan, you are one of reparations advocates, right? So like the work that this channel has been doing, you and Kim, NCO, right, and as here on ETN, we are as much of reparations advocacy push as any, right? Now, but I did want to say that, and also I did want to, you mentioned one thing that I think we want to come back to at a certain point when we have more time, which is and I'm about to tweet about this too. The left was very silent about the reparations hearings and markups. You didn't hear no progressives talking about it. Where was the Young Turks? Where was the rational whatever that is? Where's Jimmy Dore at? Where is where is the left progressive? Where is the Hill more rising with the Hill and all that? Right? Where is the progressive? Very silent. Something historic happened for Black people a few weeks. Where is the so-called progressive left? Right? To my man Tim Black, I would love to have a conversation with him about this too, because we didn't hear as much as I think we should have from our the ones that the people that get real loud and want to scream Black Lives Matter with us and be on the streets with us, right, protesting, right, and doing all of that good stuff. We also need them to be focused on what's really going to stop this a lot of what we see out there, right, and a lot of what we don't like about how we're treated here, right. So let's get to these real solutions, right. Let me just end with that. It was a lot of silence that I think we have to unpack at some point.
All right, and before we leave, family, I just want to put up this flyer. Next Tuesday, we have the wonderful Key Matthews. Did we talk about this at all, Kim, earlier? No.
Not that I remember.
No, we didn't.
All right, cool. So real quick, for those who are still on and for those who will be watching the replay, we have the wonderful Key Matthews. She was on the platform a couple of months ago, I believe, but we're going to have her back, and we're going to really be going in on the housing crisis, especially with the Black community, and how it's definitely impacted, the Black population, the Native Blacks here. So please join us. That will be at 6 o'clock next Tuesday. That's 5/11/2021. And please come through. And for me, I just want to thank everybody for tuning in. We really do appreciate you. And for everyone who's listening, may you be an advocate for reparations, an ally for reparations, or against reparations. Like the video, don't like the video, comment on it, or whatever. We appreciate your feedback. So that's all I have. Is there anything, Kim, that we wanted to touch before we wrapped up?
No, just to definitely tune in, give us a call, drop us a note for next week's discussion, because we're really going to be framing it through a reparations lens. What could some recommendations on housing look like in the California AB 3121 bill? Kind of wrap your head around that, throw up some recommendations. Maybe we'll be able to get them in front of the task force. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Looking forward. All right. So we will just get out of here with this one last thing. See what Senator Uncle Tim Scott had to say about reparations last week.
Honey,
colleges to corporations to our culture, people are making money and gaining power by pretending we haven't made any progress at all. By doubling down on the divisions we've worked so hard to heal. You know this stuff is wrong. Hear me clearly. America is not a racist country.